Hello and welcome to the Argyle Financial Controller Leadership Forum, the Intelligent Controller, Faster Close, Stronger Controls, and AI-Ready Finance. My name is Michael with Argyle. It's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time today and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials and information. For those seeking CPE credit today, you must answer at least 3 polling questions and remain on the session for its duration. Polls will be found under the Polls tab next to chat. If you have any questions, you can email cpe@argyleforum.com. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Also, be sure to subscribe to Argyle on YouTube for exclusive access to all our past events. And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Larry Maisel, former adjunct professor, Columbia University Graduate School of Business. We're excited to have Larry and our panelists for a panel discussion titled Driving Visibility and Control in Real-Time Finance Environments. Larry, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Michael, and welcome everyone. I am delighted to be with you at this important executive roundtable. My name is Larry Maisel. I have helped organizations modernize finance functions, implement advanced analytics, and improve financial and business reporting, and leverage digital technologies to improve business performance and enterprise value. I've worked with organizations ranging from small to medium-sized companies to Fortune 500 enterprises, and have tried to combine strategic vision with hands-on implementation expertise, which has helped my clients to simplify complex challenges, create actionable insights, and deliver measurable outcomes. I have trained more than 500 professionals on AI-enabled analytics and have developed the groundbreaking analytics scorecard, an AI-enhanced extension of the balanced scorecard methodology that drives fact-based decision-making and enterprise alignment. I was a senior partner in charge of KPMG's finance and performance management consulting practice and have held leadership roles with Balanced Scorecard Collaborative, Oracle, and Knowledge Management. I've been a CFO and an FP&A executive for numerous companies and have published numerous publications and books on the subject. I am a CPA, chartered global management accountant, and a member of the AFP FP&A Advisory Council, amongst other things. I'd like to turn now to Thomas, who will introduce himself, and then followed by Amita. Thomas?
Thanks, Larry. Pleasure to be here today. Thomas DiFabrizio, CFO for Impellum Group Americas. It's a global talent solution business. I run finance for a $500+ million business, accounting, FP&A, treasury, tax, financial operations. I'm a CPA and I vote accounting for about 2 billion plus P&Ls. I started my career with Wall Street Finance at the Bank of New York in 2005. I came up through that Lehman Brothers collapse. That taught me early what it costs to find out about a number too late, okay? That's my focus now, moving finance from reporting what happened in the past to giving leaders early line of sight. I am a builder. I'm using AI as a corporate CFO in a few ways we'll get into in a world that's changing rapidly.
Thank you, Thomas. Amita, please share with the group.
Thank you so much, Larry. Thank you, Thomas. So I'd like to introduce myself. First of all, thank you so much for having me as a panelist in the forum today and find a chance to speak in between the OG finance veterans and add value to the discussion for today. I'm Amita Jhunjhunwala. I have over 10 years of experience currently working as a finance controller at EssilorLuxottica, currently based in Singapore. I partner with the business across functions and markets, helping drive decisions for portfolio, representing roughly 1% of our company's $34 billion global revenue. I don't see finance as a control tower or a gatekeeper, sitting on the sidelines. I set it as a co-pilot seat, working shoulder to shoulder with sales, operations, supply chain, and leadership teams to navigate uncertainty, manage risk, and unlock growth. My passion lies in helping my company move beyond traditional reporting and embrace finance as a strategic decision-making engine, one that provides real-time visibility, sharper insights, and greater control. Well, I often joke that finance professionals are the only people who can walk into a room, ruin everyone's forecast, and still get expect to be invited back. Well, I'm super excited to be a part of today's discussion and exchange some practical lessons from the front lines of modern finance.
Thank you, Amita. I'd like to start our roundtable discussion and invite each of you to submit questions in the chat box capability. We really want it to be as interactive as we possibly can get the session to be. But let me start with a 10,000-foot setting the stage or context. And the question is, how would you describe your finance function in terms of its stage of maturity from traditional finance to what many are beginning to call modern finance? So let me turn to you, Thomas, first, and see if you can help us set the stage for your organization.
Yeah, Larry, great question here. I'm excited to hear what Amita has to say on this. But for me, I think about maturity in 3 stages, and they really build on each other. And so stage 1, that we mentioned earlier, is traditional finance. That's that scorekeeping play there. It tells you what already happened, and that's accurate and necessary, and I think it's got to be there. But it's always looking backwards. And so my second stage of maturity, how I think about it in that modern finance layer, is more visibility. You see what's happening while there's still time to do something about it. So in my personal opinion, I'd rather have a really ugly spreadsheet today that helps me make a decision that I need to make today versus a beautiful, great 25 tab spreadsheet. And I love spreadsheets. Next week, when I had already made the decision this week. So visibility and timing is very important. And that last stage, how I think about it, is really more on leading finance. So it's really around that navigation, that buzzword there. It's not just showing that number. You're really tying what's driving it and helping the business decide what's next. So for me, the foundation never changes. That close, controls, clean accounting. That's the price of admissions we have to endure as finance professionals. What I believe that is looking to change is how fast you can turn those numbers into decision. And that's what I'd say, technology, I don't think technology really makes you mature. I think it scales whatever you really already have. So if you've got good judgment, it makes it sharper. If you've got that messy data underneath, it just makes it more messy. So I'm not sure. We'll get into. I don't know if it's really the tech stack that's the maturity factor. It's like if your close is happening now and you're still getting surprised, it really doesn't matter how much money you spend on AI. You really got to set the foundationals. So that's how the frame I use. But I'm curious what Amita has to say.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, thank you, Larry and Thomas. I think you were right on point, and I would just like to elevate what you said by adding my perspective to it. I think if I look at myself and I think about what I used to think about finance initially when I joined this particular stream, I think I always used to have one directional notion in my mind. That sales, is the revenue driver, and everyone else is just a support function, and also seen as cost drivers in the P&L structure. Now, over time, with the evolution of finance over the past 2 decades, in my opinion, I think the finance function has successfully transformed itself into a key driver in terms of decision making. So we no longer are, just for bookkeeping, reporting, analyzing, or consolidating, but we are the key influencers when it comes to decision making. I think if I must associate myself with some metaphors, maybe I would say finance is a torchbearer, or let's say we're the spine of the organization. So yeah, that's my take on traditional finance to modern finance, the journey and the evolution over years.
Yeah, so both of you made excellent points about speed and decision making. So let me ask you the next question. Given your organization and how it's evolving, how do you deliver real-time visibility of that information without compromising the accuracy or financial control? And Amita?
Yeah. And I'm so happy to take this question, actually, Larry, because, I so much relate to it. So I think, we often start the discussion from a different focus point, which is real-time visibility, which often, tends to lead or let's say mislead us to straight away think about technology, automations or dashboard. But in my experience, it's a completely different, ballgame. It's a game of control. So let's say, if I'm in control of the process, I naturally gain visibility, accuracy, and the ability to immediately, identify when something is not looking right. So Real-time visibility is now no more a technology challenge, it's a control challenge. So once you're truly in process, in control of the process, the real-time visibility just becomes a byproduct. So for myself, rather than investing in more in dashboards, I think I focus more on building controls directly into the transaction flow. So when data is governed at source, reconciliations are automated, ownership is clear, exceptions are highlighted in real time, and finance no longer waits until month end to find problems. I think that's how we evolve, from being historians explaining what happened last month to becoming navigators identifying issues as they emerge. For me, real time visibility is not about seeing every transaction instantly. It's more about having confidence in the controls behind the data so that you can make it more decision. You can make the decisions today, not 3 weeks later. So, while some might argue that too much controls slow down the business, I would argue the opposite because I think poor control leads to rework, investigations, manual reconciliations, endless debates about, whose numbers are correct. But good controls actually accelerate the business because everyone trusts the data from the start. Now, shifting our focus to the topic of technology because it's inevitable, right? And we are ever evolving in terms of technology. So it provides speed, but I think it does not provide the truth. Because a dashboard, let's say if I talk about a dashboard, it can show you the wrong numbers in real time just as efficiently, it can show you the correct ones. So I think the finance role is more to, ensure that speed is built on the on the foundation of governance and data integrity. I think at times many companies think that they have reporting problem, but in reality, they have a control problem. So when control improves, visibility, accuracy, and speed improve together. So that's my take on real-time visibility.
Very nice. And Thomas, how about yourself?
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I won't touch the controls. Amita really hit that there, and I love how Amita's got the pumping up us finance folks. It's mentioned at the last question about we're the gatekeepers, et cetera. So I love that. I consider myself more of a nerd, but I like it. But I'll say just from my perspective on it, it's a little differently on. I'll just set a little differently from my operational view. I separate the operational transactional data from like the official books. So our leaders will get daily and weekly signals. So like pipeline from HubSpot, revenue from our BI tool, that's on a transactional level. We get our cash position daily, weekly, but the financial statements, those still go through the full close, the review. They got the full control over them. So it's really what we say, what is safe, and it's got to be labeled honestly, like, hey, this is transactional data. It's not closed. It can move. So it's like, make sure you have what's preliminary versus what is locked in. And so that way everything ties back and the leaders know it's not solid information. It's real time out of the system. We'll close the books when we close the books and get you some buttoned up numbers.
Yeah. Thomas, we used to call that the dirty ledger. until we got
I'm
it.
Going to write that down. Okay, dirty ledger. That's a good. It's provocative. I like it.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a moving target, but we always made sure that it was within a relevant range because decisions are still being made. But we wanted to just alert the users of that information that it's still subject to some refinements. Let me ask the next question, and I'll start with you, Thomas. What has been the biggest accomplishment, and there's a B part to this, biggest challenge that you have run into in creating a trusted, consistent view of financial data across the organization, really building on that last comment that you've had?
Yeah, sure. And I know Amita went into the controls kind of last conversation. I'll talk more about the challenge. I always see a challenge as an opportunity. So, there's a, technology type of conversation, but as far as technology challenges, it's more around, I've seen is really around definitions and ownerships. That's been like a real challenge that I've seen. And what I really think breaks trust is when you have different words that mean different things. So like revenue, margin, headcount. Even I've got active employees, they mean different things in different systems. So when you have two teams in a meeting, they're both showing two different numbers. Guess what? And they're both passionate about it. Both leaders are passionate. They're both probably right. And the whole meeting is around just arguing over which two numbers are right. They're probably right in their own way. In staffing, I mentioned a global staffing company. It's exceptionally sharp in revenue because we've got what we consider revenue, we've got what we consider NFI, net fee income, we've got gross margins. They're kind of three different separate conversations. So the important thing and the challenge and opportunity is that we lock in the definitions first and like one source of truth. And not, I know that's a lot talked about the system, but more around the definitions. And then as far as driving accountability and results, and I like to always put an owner behind that data definition. So if you've got, let's say active employees, my HR person owns that. And then, you make a reconciliation for everyone to see how it works. But how I frame it, and Amita will probably agree, is that finance owns the financial truth. But that business side of it, they've got to own the quality of the data that's coming into it, because things they put, let's say HubSpot pipeline, I mentioned, if you put in kind of garbage in, garbage out, so it doesn't really work. So it's really a shared responsibility between finance as the gatekeepers, financial truth experts, also the business putting in the data there. And I mentioned the single source of truth. We're my company now, we're putting in Workday for financial core. We're using Databricks as a data lake. But the platform, is an easier part. It gives you one number in one place, but it really doesn't tell you what the number means. So I really feel that finance is getting elevated in order to say, what are the drivers, what do the number mean, and how do you push it forward? But I'll stop there. I don't doubt I have the only kind of perspective on this, so I'll kick it over to Amita.
Yeah.
You know what?
How about yourself? What is the biggest accomplishment and also your biggest challenge in gaining trusted, consistent view of financial data?
Well, Larry, I don't have any other viewpoint, against what Thomas said. I completely feel him and I completely, agree with him. The key takeaways that I have from his explanation is that, there has to be segregation of ownership and there has to be a standardization. So these are the two key takeaways. But then just to, add something from my experience, I think the biggest challenge is not that the data is wrong. It's different, when it comes to different functions, because they believe it's their version of the truth, which is exactly what Thomas says. So let's say sales, owns volume, finance owns revenue, supply chain owns inventory. And when the numbers don't align, everyone debates the metric rather than the business issue. So until ownership definitions and accountability is standardized, no amount of technology can create a single source of truth. This is all I want to add to Thomas, because I think some people might just, want to talk about technology here, but I just want to clarify that you first need to have the theoretical clarity over, the practical clarity. And I would also like to argue that, most organizations don't actually have a data problem. They have a definition problem. So, ask 10 leaders what sales, margin, or even, customer means, and you might get just 10 slightly different answers. So if you're measuring the different things, it's impossible to create a consistent view, no matter how sophisticated the problem the platform is. So I think I have similar issues in my company right now, where so we had this integration of two big giant companies, which Essilor and Luxottica. They have two completely different frameworks. One of them, considers gross sales, the net commercial sales, and then finally the net sales. In between, there are financial adjustments. But when it comes to the other organization, it follows, a very different structure of, looking at sales. And now the problem arises when we have to consolidate and present it for, the review. So when usually, there's a lot of change management, right? The country managers keep changing and stuff. So, it's very hard to explain to them that, we are looking at two different metrics, but we are still consolidating them. So, yes.
Good. Amita and Thomas, those are excellent points. But Amita, one thing that resonated with me while you were talking was that word ownership. I think particularly from a controller point of view perspective, making sure that there is trusted, consistent financial data, but you don't own those results. Operating individuals or operating business units own it. And that's a fine line to be able to maintain that relationship within the organization. So I think that really resonated with me. Before we get to the next question or issue, I want to encourage everyone to use the chat box and submit any questions or points of view that you may have to each of the questions that we've raised, or thoughts that you want to share with not only with us and have answered, but share with your colleagues on the call. So let me now turn, Amita, let me ask you another question. Basically, how are you leveraging real-time reporting? We talked about speed. Thomas made a great point about speed and velocity of information. But how are you leveraging real-time reporting to improve decision-making across the finance and the broader business operating units?
Well, thanks, Larry, for this question. I think this is a very, very debatable question, and people might have different viewpoints. But over here, I would like to take a pause and try to understand, what drives the decision making? Because is it really the real time reporting? Because I think not. I think decisions are rarely made based on what happened yesterday. Instead, decisions, I think, are made based on what we believe will happen tomorrow. So, to emphasize my point here, I see real time reporting as a leverage to improve forecasting, rather than the end goal itself. So, I think finance sometimes, fall into the trap of measuring success by how quickly we can produce reports. Uh, but the business does not get paid for reports. I think gets paid for decisions, and most precisely, correct decisions. The question I'm usually ask my team is not how real time our reporting is, but how quickly we can identify and act what matters. So in my role, I have tried to shift the conversation usually, from reporting outcomes to managing the drivers. Instead of waiting for month end to discover, that there's a sales shortfall or, there's a margin issue, we would monitor the leading indicators as they happen, challenge the anomalies early in time, and then engage the business before the problems become the financial results. So that's where I think my philosophy comes in, of finance becoming a co-pilot to the business rather than being a rear view mirror. So the biggest benefit is not faster reporting, according to me, it's faster intervention. So by the time the P&L tells you there's a problem, I think it's often too late. So real-time visibility allows you to change the outcome before the month closes. So for me, the real evolution of finance is moving beyond the reporting history to continuously refine the future. Yeah. Over to you, Thomas. Have
Yeah,
anything?
Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I'll only add a few things to that, and really just around, it's great to say you have real time, but as long as you get the information in a timely fashion for the decision makers to make the decision, that's good enough. You don't need something updated daily if they only got to make the decision weekly. So I would say you've got to have it in a timely fashion. It doesn't have to be quote unquote real time. It matters when you need it. And then also from perspective, just tying off what Mita said, finance has got to add the so what to it. And so you can have data all you want, but you really need to add the so what. As she mentioned, you need to push forward into what does it mean for the future. And then just tying, my last piece will be, you can have the data in the timely fashion. You could say the so what, but if you don't have the rhythm, the real owners, and the follow-up, it won't go to good use. You need to have, if it requires weekly meetings, you'd have weekly, bi-weekly, what have you, but you need to have the people who can make the decisions in the room with the data and owners to make the decision. Otherwise, you'll be just talking in a circle, and there'll be nothing done. And if you don't have the follow-up to make sure people did it, a lot of times things don't get done. I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Just to add one more point, I think my ambition, in my current role, because I'm still a finance controller, so it's not to give the management a dashboard that updates every minute, but my ambition is to give the management the confidence to make decisions every minute because they trust the data behind it.
Yeah, I think there's a long conversation on dashboards and usefulness of it, and that's what the analytics scorecard is. And I mentioned that earlier, where we've introduced AI capabilities into KPI kind of metrics. And so not only looking at what has happened, but being able to look out down the road a bit and using AI to help forecast what might happen so you can take actions today to really drive your outcomes. So with that in mind, Thomas, let me ask you, how has automation and AI changed the way your team approaches financial reporting, controls, performance monitoring. What does your organization have done in the area of AI and automation? Besides Workday, which I'll consider, a great tool, but again, I'm talking more about really more contemporary automation.
Sure. The question is, I just want to confirm, how are the automation and AI changing the way my team approaches financial reporting, controls, and performance?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, fair. Okay, cool. Yeah. So, listen, I'll be honest here with everyone. When finance AI, I know Larry talked about the scorecard and stuff. When you're putting in finance AI and it doesn't work, like it's almost never the model. All right, it's that messy data you had underneath it, and that no one really likes to talk about. I know Larry mentioned the Workday and the data lakes. We're trying to fix our messy data, or it's a process that really no one defined, okay, or has no clear owner. Like if you don't take the model in AI and put it to use to make business decisions, it's not going to work. So the model's the last piece, basically. And you can't automate what you can't see anyway. So if you can't see out of the system anyway, you can't automate it. So I think that Larry's going to hone in on kind of his stuff he does is make sure you can see the data, then add the AI, the KPIs, and run with it. But where it's generally working for us is really in the anomaly detection and the reconciliation. So we've got Claude hooked into our spreadsheets that refresh from our source system. And AI so far has been great at matching what things should match and what they don't match. I think it's been for us great as far as like first drafts of items. Variance commentary has been really something I've been digging into, and it's for me it's been big for my board write-ups, presentations. I think the capability of AI, particularly Claude and PowerPoint, has been phenomenal. And then writing up those first drafts and then making, you got to make a human make the call. But anyway, it saved a lot of hours for me. What it was so long building PowerPoints, etc. Still got to put in the work, but it's really shortened that. And then for me, I've built a diagnostics using Claude API that scores our business blind spots. So I taught myself, no dev team, no marketing, just in and around my day job. And we all know with the tokens, the pricing still moves around, but none of us really have that fully budgeted yet, the costs of AI and the tokens, but it shouldn't be a blocker for anyone. My point for this kind of conversation here is that you can build it now and everyone can build it. So you don't have to wait. You don't have to say, I think I got this.
Yeah.
Get in there and use it. So, and on the controls, I know, the controllership here is that in the past, hey, you said, I'm going to sample 25 transactions. Now you just test them all. The government still holds, but really, ultimately, as far as the controls are concerned, AI drafts it. It doesn't sign anything. A person's always got to own the number. So, really, I've also rebuilt my global trading deck in 4 days with AI. We had a prior CFO. They took a crack at a consultant for 3 months. Couldn't make it happen. And the gap wasn't really talent. This other person was way smart. It was just how they used what they were using. They were using a different system. They didn't have the business context versus how I used it in my business context was to get it done way faster. So things where you can outpace people rather fast if you put it to use on what you're doing, but you'll never know until you get your hands dirty. With that, I'll pass over the meeting here with she thinks.
Yeah, that's a great example, by the way, Thomas. Great example where you were able to do something in a few days, whatever, and someone else took months. And not that they weren't capable and competent. It was just how you approached it and how you leveraged the tools. Anita, how about yourself? How has AI and automation been impacting your organization, your finance organization?
Yeah, I think on a lighter note, I think AI is still just too naive to mingle with us. So I think we let it grow now. But just coming to the serious discussion here, I think there's a lot of excitement around AI right now, and rightly so, because many finance leaders have the fear of lagging behind or maybe even being left out. So while we have not yet made any significant investments into the AI at scale, in our company, but we've been actively exploring, where it can create genuine value, where human judgment, must firmly remain in place. So basically, we're trying to distinguish the two. So for me, the biggest opportunity is not replacing finance professionals, because that's the buzz, in the market. When you say AI in finance, people think that the it will be a headcount conversion, but I don't believe that, because for me it's more of augmenting the capabilities of the finance professionals. So automation and AI are exceptionally good at handling repetitive tasks, identifying the patterns across the large data sets, highlighting the anomalies, as Thomas said, and accelerating the analysis. So that frees the finance team from spending the time and, in terms of gathering the data, and allowing them to spend more time interpreting and influencing the decisions. So historically, finance teams have spent a lot of time, and efforts in producing the reports. So I see the future as finance spending less time producing insights and more time challenging them. At the same time, I don't believe that AI eliminates the need for controls, because we need to circle back to the topic of controls, because in fact it makes the controls even more important, because as we introduce more automation, the question shifts: can the system produce the answer, or can we trust the answer? That's why I see AI as a co-pilot rather than an autopilot. Now, it can accelerate the process, enhance the quality, and surface the opportunities. The risk also increases much faster, because accountability for
Excellent point.
decisions remains with finance.
Right. Excellent. Thank you, Amita. Another question is, I want to use the word capability or investment, but I'm not actually thinking financial only. But what areas do you find most critical to build a more agile and a data-driven controllership function over the next few years, looking out over the horizon? Where would you place your bets, as they say? What capability or what investments would you want to make to over the next several years within your organization? We'll start, Thomas. We'll ask you. We'll start with you, Thomas. Then we'll ask Amita to fill her perspective.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely happy to take this one. This really ties back to everything I've said. I know probably pretty much whatever same things Amita has said as well. It's three things for me in this order, and I like how you started off, Larry, because it ties right into what I'm going to say. Because the first thing is going to be the data foundation, not technology. So it's going to be clean, well-defined, actually governed. You get that wrong, nothing you do, no AI system you put on top is going to work. That second one for me is big. I mean, just referenced it a second ago, is people. Okay, you've got to move the team from preparing the numbers to reviewing and really designing them. And so that it's a rare skill now. You really got to hammer out like the judgment plus influence kind of like of the data. And so it's pretty interesting. So it's a hiring and training problem, not really a software problem. And then finally, the last piece is, I would say, is the tooling. And as far as AI capabilities, my preference is about AI native things. So like if you use Workday, get the AI module inside that versus third party. But I do love third parties that are purpose built. So you got to evaluate it, but don't let that purchase kind of be your strategy. You have to own the data. You've got to put it in place. You can't just buy something, set it and forget it. And so for me, I put my money on continuous controls, that monitoring, and then the master data governance, the stuff that people don't like to talk about. That's the long game before you go ahead and buy an AI dashboard, throw it on top, that the CEOs love to talk about. Because I really do feel that the technology amplifies really the foundation that you already have. And so if that process is weak, all that technology does is just breaks down, and you don't get the ROI from it. So as controllers, CFOs, folks in finance, we're going to be more and more challenged with justifying the ROI of these technology investments. And it's going to be us that's got to come to the table and say, hey, everybody, it didn't, the ROI is not there because the data that it's sitting on top of wasn't clean enough. So it's really a combination of finance and IT joining forces and helping the CEOs, salespeople, COOs understand the underlying features that are going to help your company rise and push forward in the AI world. But that's where I put my money. Love to hear Amita's thoughts.
Thank you. Amita?
I think Thomas has covered pretty much everything, but it's just that I want to add a caution here, because sometimes I think we should not confuse automation with agility, because an organization can automate thousands of processes and still make slow decisions. So true agility comes with technology, control, and business judgment working together to shorten the distance between the insight and the action. That's it.
Yeah, good. Thomas, as I was listening to you in particular, I was thinking back about all the hiring interviews I've sat through, and I see all the skills, and it always was difficult to gauge how well someone really was able to use those skills. But what I always sought out, and I found to be an important quality, was curiosity. A candidate who was really had that curiosity, to be able to look at a problem and not only be able to solve it, but think about why that problem existed. Not only how it was to be solved, but why we avoid that problem in the future, or what were the characteristics to avoid it in the future. So to me, curiosity is one of those real important capabilities, I think. We're going to be wrapping up. I do want everyone to start putting questions in. We're going to leave time at the end for Q&A. But I wanted to ask Anita, and then followed by Thomas. Why don't you just share your final thoughts on today's roundtable?
Yeah, I think, if I have to combine the discussion points between myself and Thomas, I want to conclude today's discussion by keeping it short and emphasizing on three key takeaways. Don't pursue faster reporting, pursue faster decisions. The goal is not to explain the results, but to influence the outcomes. Segregation of the accountability and ownership. And last but not the least, talking about AI, because that's the most buzzing topic. I think AI would scale intelligence, but the trust would scale adoption. Yeah.
Yeah. And Thomas, yourself?
Yeah, I think it's great. I'll just tie off and put a bow on this thing. Again, I'll leave you. I started my career in finance through the Lehman Brothers collapse, where one day delay in information was very expensive. So ever since then, I've been trying to close that gap. You want to see things earlier with the same discipline and trust that people already expect from finance. So for me, get your definitions of the metrics right, keep the humans accountable, and really get out there and pick a real workflow that's in your business this quarter and actually rebuild it with the tools that are available to you. Copilot, Claude, ChatGPT, internal AI systems. The whole game's about seeing the problems early and deciding faster, as Amita said. So you got to do it before it gets expensive. So I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. We have some time for question and answer. Let me open the conversation and ask the participants to put into the chat any questions you may have. I think we've done such a wonderful job of providing insight that any questions from the participants, from the audience?
Larry, we do have some questions right here in our chat box, and I'm ready to read those out to you if you're ready, or if you want to look in the backstage.
We are.
Okay.
I see them. A great question from Sharon. What AI tools do you find most valuable? I'll start, Thomas, with you, and then we'll ask Amita.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you start with what you got, first of all. But if it was for me, I think Claude. For me, Claude is by far the best tool as a financial professional. The fact that it integrates very well with PowerPoint, very well with Excel. By far, in my opinion, at this point, better than Copilot I've used in ChatGPT. Better than those two, just speaking as a financial professional. I will say you should use, and we do use AI that's inherent in your existing systems. Let's say HubSpot. They've got some AI analyzers. If you have a Workday, if you have whatever financial system you use those inherent bolt-ons. But the big ones, Anthropic is going to be my favorite one today. But most systems you buy have inherent AI tools. Machine learning's been around for decades, so you don't really have to go with just quote-unquote AI. But those are the tools that I'm feeling right now.
Yeah. Thomas and Amita, let me just share a thought. It reminds me of that old adage: if you're a skilled craftsman or craft person, then you pick the tool that's best for that particular job at a particular point in time. So not every nail needs a hammer. Not every screw needs a screwdriver. So the AI tools a little bit like that, where you want to pick the tool that is most effective for the job at hand, but you don't want to have too much diversity because it really dilutes the learning that you're getting from each of the tools. Amita, how about your thoughts on what AI tools do you find most valuable?
Yeah, thank you, Larry. I think I totally agree with Thomas because I've also used Claude for, I would specifically mention Claude Covert because, it helps to automate a lot of your repetitive tasks. You can build agents, but you really need to be good at, using the prompts, and you need to be super, super accurate. You need to give it the exact same steps that you will follow if you're doing it. So if you get the prompts right, you get the results right.
Very good. We got a
And
question from Brian. I'm sorry, Amita.
no, it's okay. I was just adding that, Copilot is good, but it just has its own limitations because at the end of the day, it also, uses Claude Opus and, tries to process the results.
Yeah, Brian has a excellent question also. Do you use different AI tools for different segments of your business? Amita, I'll start with you and then follow with Thomas as we're running out of the last couple of moments.
Yeah. So I think to use different AI tools, we need different subscriptions, and AI subscriptions are super, super expensive. So I think I'm using only one, which is Claude. Copilot came in with my, organization's MS subscription, so it's fine. But then Claude is the one, not different AI tools. Yeah.
And Thomas, yourself?
Yeah, I'll be specific here. I've switched over to Claude for PowerPoint and for Excel completely. I still use Copilot, LinkedIn, because I think it works really well in the Microsoft suite so that they can search your emails, files on your drive, etc., meeting notes. I think it's still the number one there. And as far as AI, generally speaking, I don't really enjoy Copilot as a meeting note taker. So I would use something, I use Fireflies, but I'm not going to say that that's the best tool out there. A separate meeting note taker, I think, is excellent for taking those notes, getting those action items, recording messages for meetings you can't be there. So right now there's not a one size fits all for me, but certainly you can make one type of product work across the board, particularly Copilot. It just might not be the best, but it might be good enough.
Very good. Thank you. And thank you, Amita, and thank you, Thomas, and the audience. I hope we found it to be particularly valuable, the conversation on the roundtable. I'd like now to turn it back to Michael and for your final thoughts.
Thank you, Larry. And I want to thank all of you for a wonderful and insightful panel discussion. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. Now, this session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Our next session will begin at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be a thought leadership titled Continuous Close with SAP Autonomous Finance. Please remain on the stage, and the next session will begin automatically. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. Thank you.